The content of this podcast has not been evaluated by Health Canada or the FDA. It is educational in nature and should not be taken as medical advice. Always consult a qualified medical professional to see if a diet, lifestyle change, or supplement is right for you. Any supplements mentioned are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Please note that the opinions of the guests or hosts are their own and may not reflect those of Advanced Orthomolecular Research Incorporated. Welcome to Supplementing Health, a podcast presented by Advanced Orthomolecular Research. We are all about applying evidence-based and effective dietary, lifestyle, and natural health product strategies for your optimal health. In each episode, we will feature very engaging clinicians and experts from the world of functional and naturopathic medicine to help achieve our mission to empower people to live their best lives naturally. Welcome back to Supplementing Health. I'm your host, Cassie Price, and today I am so excited to have Chad Guenter, the founder of two remarkable nonprofits focused on raising awareness for mental health, Keep Calm, Paddle On, and Project All In. Welcome, Chad. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
So you weren't always in the wellness space. You left what could be considered a typically manly career in ironwork to pursue a role as an outdoor guide. Would you share how that transition inspired the inception of KCPO?
Yeah, I spent a few years doing ironwork, and it was more of a to pay the bills kind of job, and it actually was, I was on the road quite a bit, and it started to get super draining, and I just needed a change of path. And I was in Miami on a job, and I was just I had enough. And I started cruising, web pages and seeing what else was out there. And I'd remembered a course that I'd taken in college. I went to school to be a teacher, education degree. And I'd remembered a course I had taken, and it was an outdoor specific course in my program. And our instructor took us, or my professor took us, whitewater rafting and camping, and we hiked the Mount Robson trail, the Berg Lake Trail. And it was just something that really stuck with me, so much so that I went and did that same hike for the next 2 summers. And then that got me thinking about guiding in the outdoor industry. And then I started looking at whitewater rafting and kayaking. And I came across a website of a company called Esprit that was doing some training. I was doing 3 months, 90 days of pretty intensive whitewater leadership. And I I dropped everything. I signed up for it. And that's kind of what led me into all this water stuff that I'm into today. And subsequently from that, it just spawned this feeling that I needed to share the water with more people. And KCPO was, it didn't happen right away when I got into the guiding world. It took some time, but that's basically how it started.
Awesome. So what is it about the water that you find so healing?
I think it just demands so much of your attention. It demands so much of your respect that you need to be focused to play on the water, whether it's the river, lakes, especially oceans. Like, while you're on there, you need to pay attention. You need to be very self-aware of what's going on around you. And it, like I said, it demands everything from you. And it kind of just makes your brain shut off from the other things that you have going on in your life. And your one task, your one focus is just to get down that river, to cross that ocean, to make your, get your clients down the river safely. And I found that to be a really healing space for me. And I just had to share it.
So do you find that all outdoor activities have a similar effect for you?
To some extent, but not to the extent that being on the water has for me. Like, I snowboard quite a bit in the winter, and I ride my bike, throughout the summer. And while I really do feel that getting outside and being connected with nature and, doing those things has a large part to play in how our brains kind of start to slow down a little bit and start to be more appreciative about, our surroundings. There's nothing for me personally like the water. It just it holds a very special space for me.
So do you have a favorite place that you like to go out paddleboarding or go out rafting on the water? Like, is there a specific body that you prefer or location?
It's kind of a toss up between rivers and oceans, to be honest. They're two very different things. I really, at this point in my life, I can't get enough of the West Coast. I just got back from there. I was there for 3 weeks, and there's just something about those tall trees and, the big water. It's it's a very special place for me. And the rivers, I think, are equally important, but just in a different way. I think it's just the recognition that they're both different, but they can offer us, such valuable things.
What's the longest paddling expedition that you've done so far, and where did that take you?
It was it was actually the first KCPO that I did. It was roughly 300 kilometers. We started halfway through Lake Diefenbaker, which is the lake that sits behind the Gardner Dam. That below that, the South Saskatchewan flows out and into Saskatoon. So on the first KCPO, I paddled 150 kilometers of that lake, which it's an immense lake. It has ocean-like conditions. It's 200 feet deep in some spots. There's 800 kilometers of shoreline. It's 200 and some kilometers long. So being out there, it's not just an easy paddle across a lake. There was some of the biggest swell that I've seen on a lake. And then crossing that into the river, crossing the dam and going down the river was another 150 kilometers. So linking those two bits together, all in all, was about 300-kilometer trek. I think that seems to be the longest one that I've got so far.
So do you have any big plans for future expeditions?
Yeah, I'm always thinking about, what's next? What can I check off the paddle list? And I've done the Vancouver to Victoria paddle. That was really quite, humbling and amazing all at the same time. And while I think ocean crossings just demand so much of you and are amazing, I think my next expedition I'd like to do is link Canmore, the place that I live in, to Saskatoon, the place where I grew up in, and put those two rivers flow into each other, the Bow River and then the South Saskatchewan. And I'd really like to one day have that be my way of getting home.
That'd be quite the trek for sure. I know I've done some kayaking on the Bow River, and there's some interesting parts on it for sure. So I think that would be a very exciting trip to take, from the little sections of it that I am familiar with. Now you're a firefighter, correct? And you've been so for over a decade now?
Yeah, getting close to it.
Yeah, so I'm sure that's brought on its own challenges and pressures within your life. So I was wondering, how has that impacted your journey and inspired you along the way?
It's, I mean, what a gift to be able to help your community and to be such an integral part of the community and, help others when they're having their worst day. It's such an honor to have that as a profession. But it can be heavy at times. It can be really heavy at times. And I think, we're going to talk about Project All In a moment. And that's, my time in the fire service has kind of put me on this path, albeit very close to KCPO, but just focused slightly more specifically at first responders. And I think there is an element in the first responder world and in the fire industry that we see some heavy things, and we have resources and people that are struggling, and it's hard to get the two together. So for me, when I came into this, you kind of come into the job knowing that you're going to see some things and witness some things and be a part of some things that are, bigger than yourself. And I'm not sure I had all the tools to properly manage those, but I think now it's a lot better, and it's definitely been there's been times where I struggle to get through some of the calls that I've seen and some of the things that I've been a part of. But I think that self-recognition of what it's doing to you, what it's doing to your body, your mind, and connecting the dots is really important. And I think it's just a lifelong thing that you have to be aware of. And it's been an interesting journey through that. But yeah, it's not one you can take lightly.
So then was it your own personal experience on the job that sparked the concept for Project All In?
No, it really wasn't. It was in another job that I have. I train firefighters, military, police, and civilians in technical rescue. And there was a group that I've been working with for a very long time, and they had a few incidents, and I knew this crew quite well, and they had a few things that have happened to them internally, and it was very tough, and it was along the lines of members battling mental health issues, and people didn't see it coming, and they felt like they were a little bit at odds. It's like, how do someone so close to us that we see on our shifts all the time, and they'd be struggling so much and we not notice this. And it kind of finally came to a head when there was a specific suicide attempt from an individual that really started to make it, almost got me angry. I was like, why is this happening to us? Why are first responders feeling like they have no options, or if there is options, we know that there's options for resources. Why do they feel like they can't get them? Why do they feel like they can't ask for them? Why is the ask for help so hard? And that's really what kind of spawned my thought process of, how do we make the ask for help easier? I've been thinking about that for 10 years as I worked with the hundreds of people that we've taken down the river for KCPO. And the reoccurring question was, I can't ask for help. I find asking for help so embarrassing, or such a struggle, or shameful, or it makes me anxious. Whatever adjective or whatever feeling you want to put in there is, it was stopping people from asking for help. So really this, I guess the thoughts have always been there, and how do we make this easier? But when it was more specific to the industry that I was in, it really, I guess it just hit home a lot closer, and it was time to see if we can make some change.
That's awesome. I think with a lot of movements that have been happening, like Bell Talk Days and that sort of thing, it is starting to be normalized somewhat, these conversations around mental health. But do you think there's an importance for creating specific dialogues for different groupings of people that struggle with mental health?
Yeah, I really do. And the the example I have to use is in the first responder world. So when firefighters or police officers, let's say, they're having a bad day, like anyone has a bad day in reality. Anyone can have a bad day, absolutely anyone. But when someone that has a specific type of job that requires you to interact with the public, and in police officers world, you might get spit on, you might get sworn at, you probably don't get the respect that you deserve in that kind of position. And they feel, and firefighters and the EMS that I've talked to, military that I've talked to, we need to talk to somebody that gets it. Like, we need to have the approach to finding help be about something that's common, like something that we understand. And sometimes when, in my own examples, talking to a therapist, it helps immensely if that person across the room from you, across the table, knows what a night shift is like, knows what it's like to go to a call and then back to the family, and then maybe back to another call, or go back to work, as a lot of our volunteer and paid on call fire departments work. And having someone that knows that, having a program that understands that, having a specific, like you said, having it worded differently so that it suits particular groups, I think is very important, because then it makes us understand that, hey, other people in our group are feeling this too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, as first responders, you guys have to see and deal with situations that the rest of us have the luxury of blocking out if we so choose, in a lot of cases, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're dealing with some very traumatic things sometimes, and you just have to kind of buckle down and get it done in the moment, which I'm sure can be very challenging. Do you think there's additional pressures on men in the industry to just deal when it comes to their mental health, as opposed to the women?
I do a little bit, but I also think it's changing quite a bit. So there is definitely an old guard that has the mentality of, you signed up for this job, so man up, quote unquote, man up, whatever that means, like, don't talk about it, don't show emotion, I guess is what that is pertaining to. I had a conversation with a firefighter from the US, and he was very well respected, very high up. And I did a presentation to a large group, and he came up to me after and he said, I couldn't do what you do. I couldn't say the things that you say. I couldn't be up there and be vulnerable. And he was saying thank you. He said thank you for doing what you do, but there is still a large presence of men, I think, and just people in general in this service, that find it hard to show that, yeah, something is bothering me. And when we don't have something physically wrong with us due to that thing that we experienced, then it's hard to justify why we shouldn't just be okay. If I break my arm at that call because I was trying to help this person get out of that particular situation, then it's like, well, yeah, I did that. As a result of this, I broke my arm. I'm going to get compensated. I'm going to get, rehab, and no one thinks any less of me. This is our perception. But if I have an experience at a call and it somehow infiltrates, my defenses, and I'm like, oh man, that really affected me. And I better not say anything, though, because someone might think I'm weak-minded, that maybe I'm not there, I'm not with it. So that maybe my next call, they don't trust me to carry out a similar task. I think there is still that mindset around. I do think it is changing. I see the change. I see the change in my own fire hall. I see the change in other fire halls and other agencies, but I still think there is a long way to go. unfortunately.
So, if you could give one piece of advice to someone who is struggling and not yet comfortable opening up about it, what would that be?
Hmm. Million dollar question. Yeah, that's a tough one. Everyone thinks that when they struggle, no one will quite understand or have a similar experience. But I think once we start talking about it, we start to understand that, yeah, you have gone through something similar to me, and you feel the same way or a similar way, and okay, I'm not the only one. And sometimes that can be really hard to come out and say those things. But I think the best I don't know, piece of advice that you could put in this spot is, you if you change the trajectory of an airplane by just 1%, you will end up in a very different spot. And I think if we look at finding help that way, or just trying to change our mindsets on this topic, that we don't have to make these massive changes. We can just alter what we do, alter what we think, you know, just a little bit. I think it makes a big, massive difference.
Okay, so along the same vein, then, for you personally, was there a piece of advice or an aha moment that helped you take the turn with your own personal situation?
Yeah, I've had. I feel like I've been very fortunate to have a lot of impactful people along the way for me. But I would say confidently, easily, that yeah, my father, just always saying, find the humor in it, find the humor in that situation, and that can help quite a bit. Yeah, that's easily the best advice I've been given.
And so did you ever expect your life to follow the path that it has?
No, I don't think so. I really, like, I went to school to be a teacher, and to be honest, that was a phys ed teacher. That's what I wanted to be, because I just wanted to keep playing sports. And I went to college to play volleyball, and I was like, well, this just makes sense. This is what I'm going to do. And I was really there to play volleyball, and I just had to go to school because of it. And and then I took different paths along the way. I did the iron work. I I did. I was an arborist for a while. I did security for bands and musicians and stuff like that. And then in a roundabout way, I'm back. I'm back teaching. I'm back presenting to people. I'm back speaking in front of groups, and in yeah, I honestly, when I left teaching, I didn't think that, and I went to ironwork, I didn't think that this is where I would end up. I definitely didn't think I was going to be a firefighter, even though that was something that I had really wanted to have happen. I think you just get placed, on a path, and then just starts working that way for you if you really try and change it for yourself.
So in your opinion, have we made big enough strides towards normalizing mental health yet, or do you think there's still a long way to go?
Yeah, kind of a two-sided answer, I suppose. And yes, I think strides have been big. I I don't want to call it lip service, but there has been, we start throwing around these terms a lot, and maybe, like mental health and mental illness, mental health matters, and all that sort of stuff. And while I think that happens in a lot of areas. I think we need to really just recognize, that's that if we throw it around a lot and we don't actually act on it, that those are two very different things. So I do think that we've been making big strides towards normalizing the conversation and all of this. I think we do have a lot of way to go yet, but I mean, normalizing things, just making things more common is just to talk about them more. And I think doing what we're doing today, you know, just having this conversation is one of those small steps, but makes a big difference. And I think if more people realize that, it is okay to talk about this stuff, it is absolutely okay. And I think the more that we recognize that, I think the easier it will get. You're always going to be presented with challenges when you're trying to change things or progress things, and it's no different than the large challenges and progressions that we've tried to make as humans along the way. But I see good and big things for this, so I'm very hopeful, very very optimistic about it.
For others who want to help or make a difference, are there signs of mental health issues that you recommend looking out for in those around you?
That's tough because I wish there was just one clear answer. Look for this and you will know. But everyone deals with mental health and their mental illness and whatever they have going on in different ways. And our brains are all very, very different. To the point where we don't have them fully figured out yet, why people do certain things when seeing certain things or experience certain things. So while it is different for everyone, I think, the common thread that we can pull from this is when people start just doing different things, right? They're not doing their normal routine. They're, maybe they're drinking a little bit more than they used to. They were, just a once in a while drinker, and all of a sudden they've turned into a little bit more than that. Or they were a punctual person and, they're not so punctual anymore. They're consistently late, or maybe they don't even show up. A little bit agitated, a little bit more quickly than they used to be. I think just that identification process of those people that are close to us, because we're not going to recognize that likely in people that we're not close to. So, for those that are, in your circle, and you're starting to see some different behavioral changes, that's probably a good indication that something's up. And that's where, we do the check-in. It's like, hey, what, how have you been? What's going on? Let's grab a coffee. Let's do that hike that you've been wanting to do, or it's a tough time of life too. Everyone's, we're told to stay distant from each other, and so that makes it equally challenging. So that's why that check-in amongst our friends, our family is so important. So I think, noticing things that are different in our loved ones is probably the easiest, biggest indicator that I can think of.
And do you have tips for starting that conversation with someone that's a friend or a family member that you have noticed those differences?
Yeah, and that can be tricky too, because we just never know. We always want to make sure we don't say the wrong thing, but I think we dwell too much on thinking about, oh man, I really hope I say the right thing. Just think less about that, worry less about that, and just offer a safe space to these friends and family, and just make sure that they know that they're not judged for what they need to say, get off their chest. Yeah, just hold that respect and that safe space, without judgment. I think is a big way to help get that person to open up.
Okay, awesome. So jumping back a little bit here,
Hmm.
when you had mentioned getting more people involved and taking steps to, I guess, help improve the mental health landscape that we currently are seeing. How can people get involved in that if they don't know where to start?
Well, I think if you're a part of an agency specifically, and let's just use the first responder realm for this example, that you know, see if there's see if there's some resources that are available to your agency, and see if you can be a part of that. Now, not all of us need to be a part of that. We all have our own special place in how this works for each other, and maybe you understand that that's not the best spot for you, but if there is, and that is something that you could take on, and try and find some, your agency resources, and maybe attach yourself to a few of the people that are a part of that, and see, where you could help out. I don't think everyone has the capacity to take on a lot of heavy stuff. I don't think humans in general have the capacity to take on heavy stuff continually. So to be involved in this, I think, to save our own mental health can be quite simple. And it's just circling back to that, that check-in for our friends, and that check-in for our family, and, being, just offering up that space, I think, is a very valuable and easy place to start with getting involved in making this easier. Um, there's a lot of initiatives that are starting up or have been around for quite a while, and initiatives, like similar to KCPO, where we paddle, we get people on the water, and people are just standing up for loved ones. They're literally paddling down the river, standing up for loved ones that are battling, potentially standing up for themselves as well, but in a periphery kind of a way. They're getting involved by showing that they understand and that they're aware. And sometimes that's all folks need when they're struggling, is to see that others, are willing to do something like that. So maybe finding an initiative that's in the place that you live, in the city that you are in, or something like that. Find an initiative, and something that interests you, that are guided by people that you respect, and have a good background. I think that's another really good place to start.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what the mission behind KCPO really is?
So KCPO stands for Keep Calm, Paddle On, and it kind of derives from a military saying of keep calm, carry on. And it kind of came about from my own family's and my own personal struggles of dealing with mental health. And I have a brother who deals with mental illness, and to the point where it's made it incredibly hard for him to have a quote unquote normal life. And I was just kind of really frustrated about not being able to help him as much as I would like. So one day I bought a paddleboard from a place called Escape Sports in Saskatoon, and I bought it, and I kind of took a break from being on the water, because I was on the road working so much, and this was my chance at reconnecting with my love of the water. And then I was handed some pretty heavy news from my family, and coincidentally, that same day that I bought the paddleboard, and I sat at a coffee shop, sitting there trying to think of, how do I take this in? And I felt guilty for spending, 1,400 bucks on this paddleboard, when I could have just, given it to my family to help them out. And that's kind of where the idea for KCPO came up, is that I was just gonna get on my paddleboard and paddle for a ridiculously long period of time until people started to take note, you know, of why I was doing it. And the reason I was doing it was to raise awareness for mental illness and mental health and how we can better those situations. And so that was that first expedition I was telling you about, that 300-kilometer expedition on the Lake Diefenbaker and then subsequently on the South Saskatchewan River. And I did that solo to just kind of get people thinking, like, holy cow, this guy's doing what? He's paddling this distance. What's he doing it for? Is he just doing it? And I really just tried to generate conversation and awareness. But after I did that trip, it had really moved me. It had really benefited me in a way I didn't expect. And I opened up the next year to more people. And it was two of my very good friends. And we did that trip together on the same platform to raise awareness and money for mental illness. And the three of us got to talking, like, there is no way that we cannot open this up to more people. Like, people need to feel this experience. So the next year we opened it up to, I think, 9 people. And then the year after that, it was 12. And then the year after that, it was 20. And then the year after that, it ended up being 30. And I was turning people away. At one point in time, people had, met up with us along different parts of the river. And I think we had 100 people on the river at one time. But what we do is we pack all of our gear, our tent, our sleeping bag, our stove, our food on this little paddleboard. And we paddle down the river, make camp, and we paddle 50, 60, sometimes 70 kilometers a day to make sure that we make miles in the 3-day time period, which is three days and 150 to 160 kilometers. And what this trip has really shown us over the last 9 years is that when we put people in groups of like-minded individuals, there's some real sharing and some real compassion and some understanding that happens when it's tailored to a cause. And another thing that I noticed was that people were stepping so far out of their comfort zones, but felt supported to do so because of the people that were around them. And I think that was just such a heavy and influential metaphor for folks that struggle with mental illness. So this trip was just, KCPO was just a jumping off point for, what eventually became Project All In. But it really is a way for people to focus solely on the river and what they need to do to get down it, which is a lot like life. Sometimes we don't put the appropriate focus on the parts of our lives that we need to. And on the river, it just demands it of you. And I think a lot of people leave that trip with an understanding that, I need to find people that are like me. I need to find people that are supportive. I need to find people that understand what I'm going through. And it really has turned into something very special.
So are you still doing annual trips with KCPO then?
We did up until this year. So we did 9 years, and then, with everything that has gone on this year in the world, it seemed like it was a good idea to follow suit and not get a big group of people together, even though it is pretty easy to space out on the water sufficiently. It just seemed like a good idea to put a pause on everything, to reevaluate how it was running. And I think we'll be back. I know we'll be back next year, and we're just really excited to be able to get that trip up and running again. We've taken so many people down the river. We've been able to make such an impact on that community, and it's been such a beautiful thing to see it grow the way it has. So yeah, it would be it would be a shame to stop it.
Awesome. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today, Chad. Thank you so much for joining me. One last question I had for you is if any of the listeners want to get a hold of you or get in contact with you, how could they go about doing that?
I think the best, easiest way is probably a Chad at projectallin.ca. That's my email through our not-for-profit there, and even if it doesn't have to do with being a first responder, that's probably the easiest way to get to me, and yeah, we can start talking there.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining me. This has been absolutely lovely. And thank you to the listeners who have tuned in.
Yeah, no kidding. It's just it's been a pleasure, and I always appreciate any opportunity to be able to talk about this. So thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Supplementing Health. For more information about our guests, past shows, and future topics, please visit aor.ca/podcast or aor.us/podcast. Do you have a topic you want us to cover? We invite you to engage with us on social media to request a future topic or email us at marketing@aor.ca. We hope you tune in again next week to learn more about supplementing your health.